Welcome and Merry Christmas. We will begin our service this evening with the singing of some carols, our first one being Deck the Hall.
Let's stand and sing together, Deck the Hall. Deck the hall with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, fa la 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 la. Troll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la. See the blazing Yule before us, fa la 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 la. Strike the harp and join the chorus, fa la 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 la. Follow me in merry measure, fa la 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 la. While I tell of Yuletide treasure, fa la 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 la. Fast away the old year passes, fa la 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 la. Hail the new ye lads and lasses, fa la 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 la. Sing we joyous all together, fa la 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 la. Heedless of the wind and weather, fa la 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 la. We'll sing the first Noel. Joy to the world. Joy to the world, the word is come. Let earth with praises ring. Let every heart prepare all room, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Floods, rocks, hills, and plains, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy. No more sins and sorrows nor thorns in flesh nor crown. Let righteousness its glory show, as far as love is found, as far as love is found, as far as love is found. It's good to hear you singing. Please be seated.
Welcome, welcome to this Christmas Eve, as we gather once again to wait for the rebirth of hope, to look for a star in the heavens, find once again a shimmering light within that will remind us that joy is possible, forgiveness is possible, love is possible, peace is possible. This is the time for an element of wishful thinking a time to realize that we are creatures in the making, somewhere this side of perfection. A time to cling to that hope that we can move beyond the failures of our past and emerge from the ashes kinder, gentler, with a little more understanding, a little more tenderness, a little more compassion. A time to realize that we can carry the beauty, the joy, the mystery of this season with us into the new year, because the world always seems so beautiful, so holy on this cold winter night. We look into each other's faces and wish one another peace, joy, and goodwill, and we hope we carry these wishes with us throughout this season and throughout the coming year.
The Christmas story tells us to believe in the impossible, in the inconceivable. It tells us to open our minds and hearts to greater possibilities than we ever could have imagined. It tells us that a simple baby, born in poverty, in a simple stable surrounded by animals, can carry within him the light and love of the divine. It tells us that this is true for each and every one of us. The Christmas story and the Christmas season cause us to examine our lives and decide how we choose to live them. Do we choose the possibility of peace, kindness, generosity, and love? Or do we bow our heads in resignation, knowing that hate and greed are inevitable in our world? Do we choose to live without hope, or decide that our lives are full of hope and possibility, and that the risk of love is a risk worth taking each and every day?
Because no one is really ever ready for Christmas. If we were really all prepared, if every gift we had considered had been purchased, if every present was beautifully beribboned, if all the goodies our friends and loved ones deserved were baked and cooled and stored just so, if each and every person we love was gathered for our celebrations, if we never snapped at someone we care about, nor stopped short of being all that we could be, if our minds were 100% loving and our hearts were 100% generous, they truly would be ready, and truly we would not need Christmas quite so much.
So may we welcome in Christmas, most needed of seasons. May it come with the reminder that love does not depend on perfection, but on willingness to risk connection. May it enter into the unready manger of our hearts, that we may feel the warmth of new life and give flesh to the promise of hope that cries to bring healing into our world.
So welcome Christmas, welcome love, welcome hope. May all these be born in our unready hearts on this silent and holy night. And if you will join us now in our words of affirmation as we light our chalice. In this winter season of the year, dark and chilly, let us come into Christmas here. Let this light and warmth brighten our lives and our world. Let us find in the dark corners of our souls the light of hope, a vision of the extraordinary in the ordinary. Let us find rest in the quiet of a holy moment, to find promise and renewal. Let us find the child in each of us, the new hope, the new light born in us. Then will Christmas come.
Let's sing together, People Look East. East, the time is near of the crowning of the
Our first story tonight, a cautionary Christmas tale from our colleague Frank Rivas. He says, my little sister Renee was 10 years younger than I. Although we grew up to love one another, our relationship was not always an easy one. In fact, when she was in kindergarten, I considered her to be the most obnoxious child on the planet. So I decided to get her a lump of coal for Christmas. I know that people generally consider it Santa's responsibility to give lumps of coal to misbehaving little children, but I had learned over the years not to trust Santa's judgment. I'd seen it over and over again. The old man went easy on little kids. So the responsibility fell to me. I searched the yellow pages, went to the nearest coal yard, picked out an exceptionally large chunk, wrapped it nicely in tissue paper, a box, wrapping paper, and a bow, and placed it under the tree. Our family tradition encouraged recipients to lift, shake, and guess at the contents as soon as a gift was placed under the tree. Renee was fascinated. What gift could weigh so much? She never guessed, of course, and her excitement grew daily. Christmas morning was also governed by tradition. The gifts were sorted into 5 piles, then one at a time, going around the circle as many times as necessary. We opened our gifts for everyone to see. Renee opened mine first. As she unwrapped ribbon, paper, box, and tissue, her excitement grew. My excitement grew too, for the moment of reckoning was at hand. From her first glance at the coal, still cradled in tissue, she loved it. She screamed with delight and hugged me profusely. How was I to know that only a week earlier in her kindergarten class, she had learned to grow colorful crystals on coal? How was I to know that this would be her favorite gift? There's a moral to this story, my friends. Watch out for this season. There's a spirit in the air that can turn even the most vindictive of thoughts into good deeds.
Our next story has been told a few different ways over the years. This particular version comes to us from Helena Chapin, who was my childhood minister. May her memory be for a blessing. The brand new pastor and his wife newly assigned to their first ministry to reopen a church in suburban Brooklyn, arrived in early October excited about their work. They set a goal to have everything done in time to have their first service on Christmas Eve. They worked hard, repairing pews, plastering walls, painting, etc. And on December 18th, they were ahead of schedule and just about finished. On December 19th, a terrible storm hit the area and lasted for 2 days. On the 21st, the pastor went over to the church. His heart sank when he saw that the roof had leaked, causing a large area of plaster, about 20 feet by 8 feet, to fall off of the front wall of the sanctuary just behind the pulpit, beginning about head high. The pastor cleaned up the mess on the floor, and not knowing what else to do but postpone the Christmas service, headed home. A nearby business was having a flea market sort of sale for charity, so he stopped in. One of the items was a beautiful, handmade, ivory-colored crocheted tablecloth with just exquisite work, fine colors, and a cross embroidered right at the center. It was just the right size to cover up the hole in the front wall. He bought it, and he headed back to church. By this time it had started to snow, and an older woman running from the opposite direction was trying to catch the bus. She missed it. The pastor invited her to wait in the warm church for the next bus 45 minutes later. She sat in a pew and paid no attention to the pastor while he got a ladder and hangers and all the stuff he would need to put up the tablecloth as a wall tapestry. The pastor could hardly believe how beautiful it looked, and it covered up the entire problem area. Then he noticed the woman walking down the center aisle. Her face was like a sheet. "Pastor," she asked, "where did you get that tablecloth?" The pastor explained, and the woman asked him to check the lower right corner to see if there were initials there. E.B.G., he read. These were the initials of this woman, and she had made this tablecloth 35 years before in Austria. The woman could hardly believe it as the pastor told how he had gotten the tablecloth. The woman explained that before the war, she and her husband were well-to-do people in Austria. When the Nazis came, she was forced to leave. Her husband was going to follow her the next week. She was captured, sent to prison, and never saw her husband or her home again. The pastor wanted to give her the tablecloth, but she made him keep it for the church. The pastor insisted on driving her home. That was the least that he could do. She lived on the outside of Staten Island and was only in Brooklyn for the day to do a house cleaning job. What a wonderful service they had on Christmas Eve. The church was almost full. The music and the spirit were great. At the end of the service, the pastor and his wife greeted everyone at the door, and many said that they would be happy to return. One older man, whom the pastor recognized from the neighborhood, continued to sit in one of the pews and stare. And the pastor wondered why he wasn't leaving. The man asked him where he got that tablecloth on the front wall, because it was identical to one that his wife had made years ago when they lived in Austria before the war. And how could there be two tablecloths so much alike? He told the pastor how he forced his wife to leave for her safety, how he was supposed to follow her, but he was arrested and put into prison. He never saw his wife or his home again all these 35 years in between. The pastor asked him if he would allow him to take him for a little ride. They drove to Staten Island and to the same house where the pastor had taken the woman 3 days earlier. He helped the man climb the 3 flights of stairs to the woman's apartment, knocked on the door, and in that reunion, he saw the greatest Christmas miracle that he could ever imagine. 107 years ago tonight, I know of at least two important things that were happening. First, as I learned just a few minutes ago, it was the 98th pre-anniversary of the birth of at least one of us here in this room. Happy birthday, Annabelle. But here is the other important thing. 107 years ago tonight, the world was at war. By the end of it, they would call it the Great War. We call it the First World War now. And in the battlefields in northern France and southern Belgium, there were lines dug in, freshly cut in the earth. The German army on one side, and only a small distance away, the French and the British armies on the other. The war was new then, but they were prepared for it to go on for a long, long time. And sadly, it would. But that Christmas Eve, that first Christmas Eve in the trenches, the soldiers on both sides of the wire did what little they could to mark the occasion. They put up Christmas trees, what they could find in the way of those things, and lit candles. Some of them they put above the line of the trench, where the enemy could see it on the other side. And in the night, they sang. They didn't all speak the same language, of course, so they didn't all use the same words, but they had the same tunes. And so one side would hear the other singing and start to answer back with the same tune, and the words in their own language. Eventually, all along mile and mile of battle line in different places, people started being brave enough to put their heads up above the level of the trench, climb up to full height, and walk across that very dangerous space in between the two armies, a place called No Man's Land because it belonged to no one as yet, and take the risk of greeting their enemy face to face. This they did again and again, countless places along those miles and miles of trenches. They exchanged little gifts with each other, shared food and drink. They sang together. This did not end the war. It would go on for several more years as yet. But why should we expect a miracle to be perfect? To take every last thing that is wrong with the world and make it right when we ourselves are not perfect? A miracle is still a miracle. To celebrate and share a time of peace and joy in the midst of one of the worst wars in human history. And that, friends, was certainly a miracle.
It came on the midnight
Our next story comes to us from our colleague, David Blanchard. He says, the best story I ever heard about gift giving has nothing to do with Christmas and everything to do with Christmas. It's about a boy in Africa who wanted to give a gift to his teacher who was going home to England. The child had no money and his options were few. The day before the teacher was to leave, the child brought her a huge seashell. The teacher asked the boy where he could have found such a shell. He told her there was only one spot where such extraordinary shells could be found. And when he named the place a certain bay many miles away, the teacher was speechless. Why, it's gorgeous. It's wonderful. But you shouldn't have gone all that way to get a gift for me. His eyes brightening, the boy answered, the long walk is part of the gift. The long walk is part of the gift. Most of the meaningful gifts we give to each other require some version of that long walk. The long walk we sign on for with children who need our patience, our wisdom, our honesty, and our trust more than we might first have imagined when their lives began. The long walk we take with our friends when they are grieving, when they are ill, when they are discouraged. The long walk of feeling a sense of unity with those whom prosperity has left behind. The long walk of reconciliation with all that separates us from a deep sense of life's great purpose and meaning. The long walk is part of the gift. When Christmas has been tidied up and packed away for another year, the gifts acknowledged, many already forgotten, the new year stretches in front of us. What will get us through those months, with all they may hold, will not be the things in the boxes. We must look to the hands of those who made and wrapped and carried those gifts. With their gifts, they are telling us something too wonderful, perhaps too embarrassing for words. They are telling us that for us, they will take the long walk. So when you open a box and find the long underwear, or the fruitcake, or the dishcloth, or the seashell from a distant ocean, remember that it's not just the thought that counts. Remember, the long walk is part of the gift as well.
You now into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering which sustains our community here and also supports the work of our outreach offering recipient. Our gifts from this and all of our holiday services provide a great deal of the funding that runs Just Dane's eviction prevention program. Sometimes the difference between a family being out on the street or staying in their home can be a little help. With your help, Just Dane and Joining Forces for Families are helping people to prevent eviction and homelessness. You can see that on the screen that you can donate directly from our website, and you can also see the text to give information there. In addition, there are baskets for your cash or checks just outside of the main doors to the sanctuary here. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
We stand with eyes toward the east, awaiting the rising of a star, and pray that love shall become flesh and dwell among us, and that compassion shall be born in human hearts.
Let us be still in the darkness of our sacred space and listen to the quiet around us. For even in the quiet, there is the gentle being with others.
Let us feel the warmth of our community, knowing we are not alone. For in the quiet shadow is the glow of life within all.
Let us know in the darkness the gift each candle bears, a small flame, a diminutive light, yet the wondrous gift to kindle another's glow.
Let us be in awe at this moment as we each take up the flame and the light envelops this room, as hope for peace and goodwill fill this night. And we'll be joining together in our candle lighting and the singing of Silent Night.
Tonight, in this community, we have shared stories, sung carols, opened our hearts to the beauty of music. Tonight, we have turned to one another, lighting each other's candles in the dark. Tonight, we have dared to hear a message of hope spoken once again against the challenge of the world. It is time now. It will be time now.
Almost time.
Almost time.
We invite you to keep your candles lit until our postlude is complete. And may you carry this light with you in your heart as you go. May joy be your companion, whether you are alone or with others. May love be your strength, and may the gift of community dwell in your heart. On this night of deep darkness and indestructible hope, we wish you peace, goodness, and joy tonight and always. Good night, Merry Christmas, peace, and goodwill to you all.